itself. But our largest Grand Prix are about 100 million live audience. Some of them, and Austin is a good example, more than 400,000 people across a weekend. And the marketing side, the visibility basically is the icing on the cake and just comes on top.
Wow.
I think we have been able to really shape and identify our core values.
I feel we're in a good place in having 3 races in the US, 1 in Mexico and 1 in Brazil. It gives us a good footprint in the Americas, beyond Europe, Australia, Asia, and it justifies it as a global sport.
This is a good setting.
Okay.
You can really go full throttle. It'll get a little bit of rotation, but it won't spin out.
Perfect.
With every lap, every overseas trip, and a season that's only expanding, next year there will be 24 races around the world. Toto moves ever closer to a crossroads. He signed a 3-year contract extension at the end of 2020. Moving out of day-to-day after that, and remaining an owner, likely a vocal and interested one, feels like a real possibility. For now, his sole focus, as F1 gets more global and more profitable, is getting Mercedes back on top.
That was a racing driver turned finance person, came back as team owner and team manager, and I'm also the trainer. I love the sport and this is what I enjoy doing at the moment, but I feel when it's the 5th time in a row and you're finishing 2nd or 3rd rather than winning, these things, these negative emotions still kick in. At the end, the joint target, the joint objective is so massive that we just need to remind ourselves in these moments that we just want the same. We're just seeing the solution somewhere else. So we just need to get together and say, what is it that we want to do? Data are important to develop a quick car, but data don't make decisions. Humans do.
So who's my guest this week? The data scientist and Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen. Is the personal cost outweighed by the wider good? This is the whistleblower's dilemma. Frances Haugen calls her decision to go public with what she discovered working at Facebook not Plan A, not even Plan B, but Plan J. But if it wasn't her initial intention, it's now become central to her life. Sharing tens of thousands of internal documents with the media and US law enforcement, she wanted to show that Meta, Facebook's parent company, knew the harm it was causing and carried on regardless. The firm says Haugen's claims paint a false picture, and it makes no commercial sense to allow harmful content, as advertisers don't want it. But you can only really whistleblow once. So what happens next? And how do you keep up the pressure for change when you're now an outsider? Here's what's coming up. Do you think of Facebook as having blood on its hands?
Yes, unquestionably. Facebook's own documents say Instagram isn't just bad for teenagers. It's not just bad for children. It's not just bad for them. It's actually worse than other forms of social media. Because TikTok is about performance, it's about humor, it's about doing things with your friends. Snapchat is about faces, about augmenting your reality. Reddit is at least nominally about ideas, right? But Instagram is about bodies and social comparison.
Frances, thank you so much for being here, for talking to me today, to all of us.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Well, I mean, your voice has become very famous indeed. I wanted to start by asking how it's been since you've gone public as a whistleblower.
You know, it's so interesting. I live in Puerto Rico, and no one ever recognizes me there. And I've been really shocked at, like, in some ways my life has changed a lot, right? Like, I can sleep now at night, so that's always a good thing. I do interviews like this, which is still surreal to me. But, you know, it's enough separated from, like, San Francisco that, you know, I'm never recognized in that context. And so my life hasn't really changed that much on a day-to-day basis. I'm amazed that I can have my DMs open online. Like, you can DM me on Twitter, and, like, I don't even get harassed. And so I know that compared to, like, female politicians, I've had an easy experience.
Has that changed? Was it different when you first went public?
Oh, no. Even when I first went public.
Okay.
I've gone like maybe 10 mean messages ever. And, like, I always respond to them. So if you want to troll me.
What's your technique?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm always willing to talk to my critics.
And how do they usually calm down a bit at that point?
Yeah, they usually don't respond, you know.
Who'd have thought they'd be rude, hey? But that's interesting. You also say now you can sleep at night. Were you not sleeping when you worked at Facebook?
It's really hard living with a secret. You know, like, I think one of the things I had never really contemplated before I came out was whistleblowers in general are not in very good shape by the time they come out. And, like, one of the things that I had that I think was very different about my experience versus most people's is I lived with my parents during COVID. And so I had people who I completely trusted, who I could talk to things about. And so by the time, like, I came out, or like, by the time I acted, like, I was already aligned with, like, what I needed to do. And I think for a lot of people who are whistleblowers, they live alone with a secret where they know people's lives are on the line. And that process really eats away at you. And, you know, I know that I did what I could. And so there's a wonderful release in that, right? It's very easy to sleep in like that.
But I suppose with that, I mean, and you were not sleeping, you were stressed about what you knew. We'll get into that. Did you need a certain level of grit, resilience to actually go through with it, would you say? Because, of course, you know, there are different types of whistleblower in different circumstances.
Oh, and questionably, we actually, I think as a society, need to talk more about the continuum of whistleblowing. Like in the United States, you know, you can't sign a contract that prevents you from giving information to Congress that you believe is necessary for Congress to do oversight. You can be a very subtle, quiet whistleblower. It's just that people see the few whistleblowers that are out. And so I think it's one of these things where if you know that what you need to do is necessary, you know, I've always been a long-distance cyclist. You know, you just put on more miles. You know, just keep going. And I'm really happy with how things ended up.
Were you scared just before? You know, what was that moment like?
Yeah.
I don't even know what the moment was.
Yeah.
That you blew the whistle.
So I think there's like different sets of moments. So while I was getting the information out of Facebook, I was very worried that I wouldn't be able to get out the information that was needed, right? That I knew that this was very complicated, that if you didn't get a representative set of documents, that, you know, you could criticize it and say, this is not a full picture. And so until I was done, I was very nervous that I would not finish. But I never worried about consequences because, like, the number of lives that are on the line is astronomical, right? Like, I earnestly believe there are 10 or 20 million lives on the line in some of the most fragile places in the world.
When you say on the line, What do you mean?
So far we've had two major ethnic violence instances, genocides, they were facilitated by social media. So we had one in Myanmar where over 200,000 people died,